Today I'm going to give you a pretty detailed look at this 1987 Skyline 2000 GTS-R. The GTS-R was part of the 7th generation of the Skyline, and it succeeded the R30 series, and the equivalent car in the R30 would be the DR30. And of course it was succeeded itself by the famous R32 GTR. The three-box styling from the 1980s can be pretty polarizing, but for me, I'm a big fan of this. I definitely like it. So this was the last of the boxy Skylines, if you like, before Nissan joined the other manufacturers in going for a more organic look with the R32. But I think today these cars are just getting better and better looking with age. Under Group A rules, you had to build 2,500 cars to qualify or homologate a car for racing. But a special set of evolution rules meant that you could build a special edition and homologate certain parts with a build number as little as 500. And Nissan actually ended up building 800 of these cars. I think the rule was that they had to build 500 in any one calendar year. So it's likely they started building these in late 87, in August 87, and presumably they finished 500 of them at least in 1987 to qualify under that rule, and went on to build a further 300. The GTS-R, prepared by Fred Gibson Motorsport for Nissan, won the Sandown 500 in Australia in 1989. And it's the car that won the 1990 Australian Touring Car Championships. And many people who follow that racing would tell you that the R32 GTR won the Touring Car Champs in 1990, but in fact all but the last race was done with the HR31, and the 32 was only used in the final. So there were 800 cars made, and I believe that this is car number 209, but I haven't fully confirmed that yet. And it's hard to get exact stats because the when you do a grade lookup on these, it doesn't actually say GTS-R. You just really have to go by some of the distinct features like the paint colour. The GTS-R has unique badging and spoilers that make them easy to identify. But there are several GTS-R specific features that you can use to identify an original vehicle over one that's been made to look like a GTS-R. All GTS-R cars come in BG8 paint code, bluish black, and they have this large rear boot spoiler with the words Nissan Motorsports International, or NISMO, printed on it. The boot lid has the GTS-R lettering in silver with a red R, and at the front of the car we have this fixed position lip spoiler. It wasn't legal under Group A regulations to have an electronically adjustable spoiler. It had to be a fixed spoiler. So this fixed spoiler was included on the GTS-R so it could be homologated for racing. These Bbs wheels were actually an option not just on the GTS-R but on all Skyline models, but they're commonly seen on the GTS-R. Let's go and have a look on the inside. So all GTS-R cars were grey on the inside and came with these racing inspired bucket seats, lightweight bucket seats. They have this very small steering wheel, which must be one of the smallest steering wheels fitted to a car at the time, by Hartger. And some of the GTS-R cars are fitted with the 260k impulse speedo, as this car is, but most of them that I've seen are fitted with the standard 180k speedo. Other gauges included here are boost, which reads up to 700 millimeters of mercury or 0.93 bar or 13.53 psi, fuel gauge, oil pressure and water temperature gauges. This car has original NISMO floor mats, which seem to be quite rare as well, but may have been a dealer option. GTS-R actually deleted a number of features that weren't required in racing or weren't allowed in racing. So for example, the adjustments for controls for the front lip spoiler that you'd normally see on a GTS-X are missing, as are the cruise control switches. Let's have a look under the bonnet. Under the bonnet, the differences with the GTS-R become apparent. Of course, the biggest difference is the engine itself, which is the RB20 DET-R. So the R indicating that it has certain parts, distinct parts that were homologated for racing. And just visually, you can see the heat shield there on the tuned turbo manifold, which sort of takes on a bronzy colour with age. Other features are the front mount intercooler, and due to the size of that intercooler, the air conditioning setup is rather strange. You end up with two vents, one on each side of the car, as opposed to a single vent on the GTS-X model. There's also a strut tower brace unique to the GTS-R. Like the standard RB20, this engine is an inline 6-cylinder with 4 valves per cylinder and double overhead camshafts of the capacity of 1998 cc's. It has electronically concentrated control system, ECCS, with multi-point injection and a single turbo with intercooler. The compression ratio is 8.5 to 1 and standard boost pressure is 7 psi. Turbo on the RB20 DET-R is a Garrett T04E, and the J-pipe casting and bracket are unique to the GTS-R to make clearance for the exhaust manifold. The regular RB20 DET has a single 90-degree bend as opposed to the GTS-R's 45 plus 45 design. Interestingly, the engine output figures are quoted in net terms, meaning the power is measured at the engine crankshaft with the alternator, power steering, air conditioning and so on connected. So the quoted 210 PS here is actually much higher than the previous DR30 model's 205, which is measured on a gross basis. So in fact the GTS-R is 25% more powerful on an equivalent power basis to the previous generation. In race form, Group A cars made 436 PS or 254 kilowatts, 430 horsepower, and they ran 1.3 bar or 19 psi of boost. This car is running a Nissan, and it's making 195 rear wheel kilowatts. Steering is rack and pinion with power assist, which was a significant improvement over the R30 model's recirculating ball steering, and this is augmented by the high capacity actively controlled steering, or HICAS, rear wheel steering system, which was first introduced on the R31. This early version of HICAS uses a hydraulic mechanism to rotate the entire rear suspension, thus producing a four-wheel steering effect. This was later enhanced in the R32 model, which can control each wheel independently, and further enhanced in the 33 and 34 series. A limited slip diff is standard in this car. Curb weight was 1340 kilos or 2,954 pounds, which is about 150 kilos more than the previous generation DR30, but it's still a lightweight car compared to an R32 GTR. Yeah, so that's all the sort of technical details. Next question is, what is it like to drive? And you know, it's when you start driving this car that it really takes on a unique character compared to the either the DR30 or the GTR models. It immediately feels lighter. I guess is really, you know, it doesn't have the weight of the four-wheel drive. It has this terrific rack and pinion steering and this tiny steering wheel. When I first got in this car, first time I drove it, I immediately thought of, you know, like a Mark II Escort, RS2000 Escort, something like that. That's kind of the feeling, the driving position. You're sitting up, kind of Italian style, this little steering wheel. Next thing you notice is just the sound. The RB20 engine just makes a brilliant noise. it's got a real kind of buzz to it up high, and I don't know if that's a result of that tuned turbo manifold or just generally with the RB20. But man, it's such a nice sounding engine, very different to the sort of throatier, deeper RB26 sound. This is raspier and barkier, and yeah, it really sounds racy. Next thing you notice is just how laggy this is. It's really not making a lot of power until about 4,000 or 5,000 RPM. I think if you're racing it, and I've seen plenty of videos of them racing, you really need to keep this thing wound up, or there's just not a lot there. And even the street cars. But look, despite that, it's an absolute pleasure to drive. It feels light, easy to chuck around. All the controls are really easy. Brakes, great. Gearbox easy, clutch easy. And it really feels like quite a small car. I keep coming back to thinking of it as being like a slightly more modern version of a Ford Escort. A really different feel to the later generation cars. I really enjoy it. Yeah, so as is customary with me, I tend to make a few choice modifications without sort of taking things so far that it couldn't be put back. And it's the same with this car, although being a homologation special that's already it's rare, and I don't want to mess with it too much. So what I've done is I've changed the standard suspension for coilovers, and you can see the height that I've got here in the car, and that was really just to adjust the height. Especially the back of the car standard is very high. It's almost like dragster style. So this is the where it's sitting now, just putting the coilovers in. It's perfect. Like it's low, but it's still really pretty comfortable. And the chin spoiler is pretty low on these, but I'm actually finding it better with the coilovers in because the backs come down. This is actually easier to get over drains and so on. So the engine-wise, it's got NIS tune, and as I said, it's been tuned to 195 rear wheel kilowatts. I'm not sure how much boost that's running, but that, again, that's fine. That's perfectly adequate. It's a fairly lightweight car, and that's plenty of power. 3-inch stainless exhaust from the turbo, and pod filter. Those were the other engine modifications, and that's it. I won't take it any further than that. I had to change the fuel pump. That was just to get enough fuel for the amount of boost it's running. Inside, yeah, just again trying to keep things mostly standard. Just got the dash mat to protect it from the Australian sun. I bought this Impul gear knob just to match the Impul gauge. I've got the original knob though. And I've put in a Nismo solid shift kit just to reduce the throw and just tighten up the throw of the gearbox. That's really nice. I really like them. I did that with my 32 as well. Otherwise, it's pretty much standard in here. I've got the original radio restored in it. It had that was had an aftermarket unit actually when I got it. So I managed to find one of these on Yahoo auctions, and that all works. That's nice. So yeah, just a combination of, I guess, tasteful modifications and keeping things standard. Alright, so that's it. Thanks for joining me for this technical review, I guess, of the GTS-R and quick driving impression. Subscribe for more videos of this car and others. See ya.